6:33, we'll call the meeting to order. I hope you'll only be up here for a few minutes, but since this is the first meeting of the committee, the committee is not organized yet, so I sent out the meeting agenda, and I'll get things going. I don't know if the first item I had on the agenda was introductions, although the people sitting at the table have been the people that have been sitting on the study committee for the past couple of years, so I'm not sure that introductions are really necessary. I will note that we have two other members of the committee here tonight, Michael Moorhead and John Rooney. They have not gotten sworn in yet, so they won't be participating this evening. And Kathy Cook, who is the presumptive appointee from advisory. So, well, they've been appointed, they just haven't been sworn in. But
I've got two things to do.
So advisory it will likely be appointing Kathy, and she'll be sitting on the committee as ex officio along with myself and Chief Paulus and Chief Morrow. We do have two members of the Board of Selectmen here tonight, Brian Shea and Lisa Braccio. I don't know if you guys want to come up and kind of review the committee charge. Normally, the selectmen, come in and, want to kick off the meeting. The selectmen did approve the committee charge, and I don't know if you just want to kind of walk through it, or if you'd like me to walk through it, and then you can speak to any other points that you want to highlight. You want to do that? All right, I'll do that. So the committee membership is made up of up to 9 members. Right now there will be 8 members and 4 ex officio. Ex officio includes the town administrator, police chief, fire chief, and a member of advisory. Members have been appointed by the Board of Selectmen. Terms of office are for 1-year terms, expiring each June 30, but are going to continue for the duration of the project. If everything works out well, it'll only mean hopefully 2 more reappointments after the initial. Committee reports to the Board of Selectmen is required no less than on a quarterly basis. Committee will elect its own leadership, chair, vice chair, clerk, and establish regular meeting schedule. All records of the committee filed with the town clerk, open to public inspection, complying with applicable open meeting law, public record statutes, conflict of interest. The duties that have been established, and again, these are broad, and I think the selectmen can speak to that are here can speak to any of the responsibilities, specifics inside the duties. Committee shall work to advance the public safety facility to final design and construction in accordance with the recommendations of the Public Safety Study Committee, in accordance with Article 1 as approved at the March 8, 2017 special town meeting. Committee shall work to implement a collaborative approach with neighboring parcels, including Woodward School and the St. Mark's Golf Course, as adopted by the St. Mark's Golf Course Master Plan Committee, further supported by the Public Safety Study Committee and as presented at the March 8th special town meeting. The committee shall appoint a liaison to work with other committees as they may be formed for Woodward School and or St. Mark's Golf Course. Committee shall work cooperatively with an architectural engineering firm and the owner's project manager, OPM, in the development of biddable building plans to incorporate police, fire, ambulance dispatch, and emergency management departments. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30B and 149 regulations, committee shall assist the town administrator in procurements, including but not limited to the engagement of a project design engineer, an OPM, and a clerk of the works. The selectmen shall be the awarding authority for any and all procurements recommended by the committee. And the committee shall communicate with town departments, resources, and officials as needed. Any issues related to the project shall be brought to the attention of the Board of Selectmen at the time they are known. The board was quite clear for those that were there the other night that if something's up, if something happens, if things go sideways, they want to know sooner rather than later. So, Brian or Lisa, I don't know if you want to add anything into the charge or highlight anything for the committee?
No, I think, we discussed it at our meeting, and I think, that's good enough for me.
I guess the only thing that I would just point out that I don't think anything in that charge is a surprise to anybody in the room, to anybody that was appointed to the committee. I think that there was certainly input into the development of the charge by the group. I think everybody understands that this is probably the most high-profile project that any of us will see in our lifetimes here in town. That said, I don't know that I have a higher degree of confidence than this group that has been assembled as well, based on how well you have performed in getting us to this stage through your work on your previous committee and in your presentations to town meetings. So I have the utmost confidence and respect in everybody on the group, and I look forward to advancing this through to construction.
And I second that, and I also would just like to thank all of you for stepping forward. This is a huge project, as Brian said, and a huge responsibility, and I also have the utmost faith in all of you. I know you're going to do a phenomenal job. I know the taxpayers feel that as well. You've shown your dedication to this, so just thank you for stepping forward, and we look forward to the good things you're going to do.
Okay, so no pressure. All right, with that being said, the next item on the agenda is the organization of the committee. The committee needs to, you can establish, I put down chairman, vice chair, and clerk. It's up to you how you want to handle the organization. I think you at least need a chairman, and you can go from there. So at this point, I will accept nominations for chairman.
I'd like to nominate Jason for chairman.
Second. We have a nomination and a second. Are there any other nominations?
No, I was going to nominate Jason as well. You know it's complicated.
Do you accept the nomination?
So I will accept it under two conditions. One is I think that the entire committee should vote on a chairman. So I will certainly accept it for tonight, but I think when this committee has all 8 voting members here, I do think, I will tell you, if I am posting the agenda, I will be posting the same exact topic, because I think it's important, given this project and everything that was just outlined by the board, that we need to all vote on it. So I get Mark doesn't want to post another agenda, so I will accept it for till the next meeting and help to coordinate the rest of this meeting. The other thing I will point out is that I did recently just have a change in job status that will require me to travel to New York at least once a week. So I guess if I am chairman, I'm going to advocate for posting meetings in advance and sticking to a meeting schedule, which I know we've gotten a rhythm on, at least seeing as everyone sitting up here, at least as Public Safety Study Committee last time. If we post it ahead of time and know when it is, I think A, that's far more transparent to the public, but B, it allows all of us to coordinate schedules, shifts, travel, and anything else that comes along in life. So with those two conditions, I will accept the nomination unless the committee now wishes to change their...
I accept your conditions.
So does the motion need to be amended so that it is interim chair? Or are you comfortable accepting it?
I'm accepting it and would ask for a ratification at the next meeting.
All right, so a motion is made and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
Welcome back.
thank you. So I guess we got to go to vice chair at this point, or we can
It's up to you
hold
if
off.
you want to wait until the next meeting where you have when you have a full board, or you can pick on the people that aren't here and make and put them with those positions. So,
I think it's the same. I think we need someone to record minutes for this meeting. We obviously will have a videotape of it, but we need to comply with posting minutes for this meeting too. So I do think we need to at least appoint a clerk for tonight. It's up to you all whether you want to appoint a vice chair or you want to just wait till we redo this again in a week or 2 or 3. Just open that to discussion, and then if someone wants to make any sort of motion.
I'm okay with waiting. I'm okay with that.
Okay. Is there anyone that would like to volunteer so that we can then make a motion to record the minutes at least for the remainder of this meeting?
I started him, so.
All right.
Thanks.
So I'll make a motion to appoint John Lyons as clerk.
I'll second it.
Okay. Just for discussion purposes, John bared this burden for 3 years on the.
Yeah.
But Public Safety Study Committee, so no offense to John, I think we all owe him the duty of respect to maybe have someone else step forward come the next meeting, but I appreciate you offering to help one more time. Is there any further discussion amongst the committee on that? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Any discussion on vice chair, or is everyone okay
We do
waiting?
need the next meeting.
Yeah,
I think we can table it till next meeting.
Thank you.
okay. So that organizes us, at least for tonight. In terms of OPM bid process, I think
So
Paul's
just-
back in your court.
Yeah, just a quick update on that. So we have put out an RFQ for an owner's project manager. We have gotten approximately 28 to 30 inquiries. So we have 28 to 30 copies of the bid document that are out there. I don't think that's indicative of how many people will actually bid. We'll have to wait and see. I'm hoping that we're going to at least have probably 5 or 6 that may submit. The good thing is that either the RFQ is really clear or people just are shy, because we've had 3 questions, and they're fairly simple and straightforward questions. I will respond back to those, and the proposals are due on June 28th. At that point, I will compile those, provide those to the committee, and in the interim, I will send you the forms that you need to start thinking about in order to go through each proposal, rank it, and then the process is that once we have the top 3 from the committee, those 3 are then brought in and interviewed. And then after the interview process, you make a selection, you award to one of the 3, and then begin negotiations as to a fee and as to scope of services as to what you're looking for the OPM to do. I think, the committee's probably going to lean somewhat heavily on John Lyons, who is just fresh coming off that process. And I think, Larry Bignini with his construction experience, I think will be beneficial to that. And Michael probably would be, pretty good with that. I'm not sure how much you've gotten into that process in Westborough.
We've hired 3, but I haven't been aware of the process.
Okay. All right. So that's really where we are with the OPM. So the fact that, you don't have a full committee constituted yet tonight is really not detrimental, because it's going to be the 28th before everything comes in. It's probably going to be, just after the 4th of July, when you'd be able to get back together and take a look at what we have.
In terms of the process, we'll conduct the interviews. This committee will make a selection. With the selectmen, will we then appear before the selectmen? They confirm that, and then you go through the fee
This
negotiation,
committee-
and then there will be another.
This committee will make a recommendation for award, okay, and then the selectmen will have to award the contract, but then there'll be the negotiation of the fee. And that can be done by a subset of this group. That's a decision of the committee as to how you'd like that to happen.
Okay.
Okay? Do you want me to get right into the next
Yeah.
item? So requirements for attaining and recruiting an architect. As the committee is aware, we've been working with Dunham and Sweeney, which is now Context Architecture, Jeff Shaw, and I've done a little bit of work with this, talked with the AG's office, and it appears, regardless of if we want to retain them or not, we need to go back out to bid the way that the first bid was structured with Dunham and Sweeney. We did, it was simply for the space needs study, and then there was some schematic work which was added, but there was nothing in there that discussed the entirety of the project. So therefore, we are going to have to put that back out to bid. We cannot go out to bid for an architect while we have the bid out for the OPM. So the OPM process needs to be concluded before we can go out for the architect. the flip side of that is that the OPM can then take the lead on the process if that's something that the committee wants them to do. We can let them drive the process, and they can assist the committee in that fashion.
How long is the bid process? 30 days?
So the bid process, no, advertising, it's got to be in and published for 2 weeks. So it's probably, it's been about 4 or 5 weeks, I think, from the time that we actually got it published, and we left, we left it out there for a little bit to make sure we got enough respondents.
That's for the OPM.
That's for the OPM.
And then we'd need another 4 weeks for the
So,
architect.
so in my mind, you're going to get the responses in for the OPM June 28th. Let's assume you've conducted interviews and you kind of have, you make a recommendation for award by, I don't know, the 3rd week in July. And by the time you negotiate fee and everything, you're probably going to have an OPM on board sometime at the beginning, 2nd week of August. You'll then have a bid process out for, an architect. The architect will probably be on board sometime around October. So then we'll have to talk about timeline. And the selectmen are dealing with their own timelines in terms of the special act, which is before the legislature. We're trying to move that along as quickly as possible. Normally we get that sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas. I'm trying to move that process along because we cannot close on the property until the special act is complete. And so we're trying to look at that, plus there's a conservation restriction that's being worked on, which really can't be defined too much until we know what the building envelope looks like and what the site envelope looks like, so we're not putting part of the property into conservation restriction that we actually need to use for the project. So there's a lot of moving parts here, but obviously the first one to fall is going to be the OPM.
Mr. Reardon, you have something?
Mark, is there a reason that the bid process cannot proceed parallel?
The answer that I got from the AG's office is that you cannot have 2 processes out at the same time like that. That was really, they didn't give a whole lot more detail because, we've discussed with them that, we're going to have to put it out for the architect, and so the knee jerk was, well, we'll put it out. Well, no, you've got an OPM process out and open. You need to conclude that process, and then you can put it back
Is
out.
the process concluded at the end of the bidding as opposed to the hiring of the person?
I can get the details on the specific
Okay.
of that and see. But and the other thing is when you get the OPM on board, they can drive the rest of this process. But you're correct. If we can get the bid out so that responses come in, OPM is on board and can help assist the committee from that point, that would be beneficial.
Because we can't even look at the golf course as a type of project or what's going to go into that until after we figure out what's going on, what we need for our site. So I was kind of hoping we could start looking at what needs to be moved,
Correct.
how we're going to move that, and do that in October, November, if humanly possible.
Correct.
Doesn't
Well,
take two.
and we need to close on the property, so the
Of course.
property is now ours.
Wow.
And we, like I said, so there's a lot of moving parts. The way that this happened, and I think it was wonderful, the support that it got at town meeting, and wonderful the support it got at the ballot. But in my, history with municipalities and projects like this and that, you never get everything all at once. So you don't always have all your construction, your design, and everything all in one basket. So it's more phased. We've got everything, and now we want to try and run. And plus, we've got property transaction in the middle of it too. So,
But you might want to push back on, maybe talk to the AG's office and understand what they do mean about 2 processes can't be done simultaneously, because it doesn't necessarily make sense. So that maybe, Mr. Ernie's right, cut it, what do they mean by what one has to, how far you have to be with one before you go into the other?
Right.
Because, 3 weeks is 3 weeks.
right, we'll get, I will get the answer on that, and we'll find that and get clarification.
I haven't read the RFQ for the OPM, but how much does it include how much scope is included for the golf course of their work?
None.
None?
Town meeting didn't fund, I've had this discussion several times, town meeting did not fund anything for the golf course.
I'm
So-
talking about the OPM. What are we asking the OPM to be in charge of?
I think the wording was collaboratively work with the contiguous projects that may be going on at the same time.
In other words, if you recall the last design, the design that took Woodward and the golf course and everything into account, I think that, to ensure that, things are cut in terms of access for Woodward, that things are laid out so that the golf course can put things where they need to, type of thing, but there is no money in there to reconstruct a hole or a tee box or any of that.
For construction, I know, but how much are we gonna ask of the OPM?
How much are you designing of the golf
How
course?
much are we asking of the OPM to be in charge of for the whole project?
You're not asking the OPM to do anything with regards to the golf course specifically.
Right, 'cause
Anything that
we've got a
you-
lot of overlap, right?
And that's going to be, the committee is really going to have to work on that, because there is going to be some overlap, and you are going to have to stay within the four corners, and there may be some questions that you ask that are going to need to be answered, to see how far you can round the corners. Because it will make sense, that, when you have large machinery and things like that on site, shaping the site, that maybe, some things are done to accommodate some of the future things that could happen with the school and with the golf course.
Yeah, I made this comment the other night. I know town meeting did not specifically or did not allocate funds for any redesign of the golf course, but I think it's clear to everyone that the reason that the article passed was as a result of an understanding and a compromise with Ms. Gillespie at Open Space and the golf course contingent, that at the end of the day, it's the objective to have a new public safety facility and maintain the existence of the golf course. So to the extent that we can get advice and consultation as part of the process that addresses the golf course needs, it seems to make sense. Now, I don't know if that would be an extra expense or if they can, as you say, round the corners, but I do think it's important at the end of the day that we keep our eye obviously on the main objective of building the public safety facility, but at the same time be cognizant of the golf course needs as well as the neighbors that we talked about up and down Latasquama. I mean, that is a whole package I think we need to keep our eye on.
I guess, I think, Mark, clearly I think we need to get further clarity on what exactly, if we had all the right expertise sitting up here, when we could go out to bid for the architect and start that process. I just think we need a definitive, but then I think it seems to me to make sense that we absolutely need the OPM involved with the selection process to help think through some of the issues that will come up during that. I'm sure context, would come in, but there's probably going to be others, and we need to be able to vet, between retaining and starting anew. But I think we should work to advance as much as we can that we're comfortable advancing, because I think 3 weeks is 3 weeks, and with all of this contiguous issues that need to go on in terms of when the special act, what are we doing with the golf course? What is the school committee going to decide to do with Woodward? We're slowly looking at a spring 2018 shovels in the ground that all of a sudden, right? If some things don't fall the right way, and let's not forget the slide we put up at town meeting that says, as this thing slips, it's at least $750,000 a year, and that's assuming a static economy. Right? If the economy continues to soar, it's going to be worse than that.
Right.
So I think we're only shooting ourselves in the foot and taking away opportunities to save money that the town could then reallocate to do all the things that I think people are hoping that they do, and the reason they voted yes.
Right.
Sorry, I don't know, John, if you had something else.
Nope, pretty much.
I mean, I think if we use the same strategy we did with the consultants that we hired, we gave them direction on, when we first looked at the parcel, to take all this kind of things that were in account, the neighbors, future expansion, access. We gave them directions on what to do. I think if we do the same thing with whoever we hire, to say, look, we want to make sure there is a plan for the golf course, there is a plan for the buses to get through. It may not happen, but we don't want it to be because we did something to prevent that. We want it to be because the town does it. So if we need to remove fill and the golf course is potentially going to need fill, we want to make sure that's taken into account, where we can maybe store it there. If the town decides not to do a golf course, then the fill, but we don't want to, spend money to remove it and then spend money to bring it back. We want somebody to be on board and have, for the benefit of the town. If we can give them the guidance that that's what we want to do, we'll certainly do that.
Is there any other questions for Mark on that particular topic?
No.
So you'll report back to the
Yes.
broader committee on that?
Yep.
Our next item is just any matters properly before the committee. I think most of us were at the Board of Selectmen meeting, not last night, but 2 weeks ago, where the appointments were made, and I think there's a very clear message that to the extent the golf course cannot close as part of this process, that is the ultimate goal. I think that still, I think we heard that loud and clear from everyone that was sitting up there that night. Obviously, we have to tell, see that whether that's reality or not. But I do think it would be important, Mark. I know there was some agenda items last night related to formation of a golf course committee that's going to be examining that. Is there any update we should be aware of?
So the golf course committee, the charge was accepted. It's up to 7 members. I don't envision 7 members. I think 7 is kind of an onerous number. I don't think the selectmen will fill it to 7, but we'll take interest. People who want to submit a volunteer form. And the selectmen meet again on July 18th. But if we have volunteer forms in, and the selectmen have, we have something that we can move on and make appointments, I think they would look to try and have a quick meeting between now and their next formal meeting to try and get that done and get that group up and running.
Quick question, is there a charge for that committee?
There is a charge.
There is one?
Yes.
So the one before was just an informal, not formally appointed committee
Yes.
that David Perry was on.
That was not a town committee. That was just yeah, that was John Wilson had that group. David attached himself to the group. So it was a very much an informal group. And now we'll formalize. I think a lot of those people probably would be part of it.
And on that is the plan, there's one ex officio member from this committee that would be...
So the way that it was structured was up to 7 members. Ex officio would be myself. Although if depending on meetings and everything and that, it was mentioned that it would probably be better if somebody representing me, if not me, make sure it was good continuity. So I might, have someone else in my stead and be there. And also a member of this committee, because we did say in the charge that you would establish liaisons with the golf committee, and then if the school decides to set something up forward with school access, that you would have somebody who would, mind that committee as well to make sure that that collaborative nature is being done with the project.
So is it our job to recommend someone the selectmen appoint, or are the selectmen, how do we want to structure that?
It's your job to recommend somebody. Obviously, when you get a full committee together, and when that committee gets up and running, you can let the board know or let me know, who that would be. And so that way, when they're ready to go, you'll have somebody.
So I think that will be right after elections of, chair, vice chair, and clerk next time. I think those that have an interest, we should just put it out there so we're not holding anything up, and whoever that member is ready to go once the selectmen appoint that committee. In terms of the school, I know that there hasn't been any conversation with them,
No.
but I do think it's worth, if at least the folks that are up here tonight, if me at least reaching out with Mark to the superintendent and the chair of the school committee to at least get them thinking about it, because I think they're clearly going to start to go into summer mode, and just say, what are you doing? Do you want to have a joint meeting with us? Just to understand what our timeline is so that they can think about whatever they're gonna be proposing and whether that matches up or not. I don't know that we need to wait for a formal liaison for that. I think we can already see there's already a lot of dominoes lining up. I hate for them to come back with a request late in the game that we're not as agile and able to accommodate as much as we would. So I don't know if anyone sees any objection to initiating that now, or if you want to wait till the next meeting. I don't think we need a liaison, that's just my opinion.
I don't think we need
Yeah.
that. I don't think so either. We can appoint when we do.
Okay. You okay with me reaching out and just saying, we're up and running, what are you thinking? Do you want to have a joint meeting of the two committees at some future date?
Yep.
Okay. Are there any other committees in town, right? I think one of our other really difficult jobs is going to be, there's a lot of committees, some that are, have authority to grant certain permits for the project, but others that we need to be working with early on. Are there any that you think we should be starting to formulate a game plan with, given that the summer meeting calendar tends to be light in town government, but I think we all know we have our work cut out for us this summer. So are there any other committees that you think we should be reaching out to collaborate with sooner rather than later? I think it's too early for conservation and planning because they're more of they're going to be given
Until
permits.
you know where the building is going to be, and until there's some level of design, and John shaking his head, yeah, so until you have some of that detail, there's really not that much that they can tell you. So I think it's probably premature, and you're going to have enough to do without reaching out at that point. They're aware of you, and they're aware of what's going on, and but I think as soon as you start to have something definitive and you understand, what wetlands or areas of conservation that you might be touching, and getting on planning board schedule, and I think that's more of a fall discussion of this now.
Works for me.
Yeah, I think the OPM with his expertise would be able to help out.
Yeah,
with all that
they're
too.
going to have to lead that discussion.
Right.
In terms of next steps in a meeting schedule, so June 28th is the magic date. I think we should outline a process tonight of how the committee wants to receive the documentation that Mark gathers, whether it's 10 bids, 20 bids, 30 bids, given that that's the week leading into July 4th. I don't know what everyone's calendar is, but I think when we vet that needs to be all voting members. I mean, that's probably one of the top 3 decisions that this committee is going to do, and even just narrowing it down to 3, we need consensus. So I don't know what everyone's schedule is in and around the holiday. If that wasn't a holiday week, I'd be recommending that the committee meet that week sometime, just to make sure we're not dragging the process. But I don't know if everyone wants to compare calendars, if they want to come back with some dates, and I'll find the best date. It's up to you, and because it's open discussion, those that
I'm available that week,
Okay.
so.
I'll make whatever work. as well.
I am available that week too, so I don't know.
The week after 4th of July? Oh, the 4th of July?
July 4th.
Yeah, so it starts, the 3rd is the Monday,
Third is a Monday.
so town holiday's Tuesday, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be away.
Gone the whole week.
I'll be gone the 3rd and 4th, but I could come back.
I should be available that week.
Kathy, even though you don't, if you're an ex officio, you won't have a vote, I think it's important to have feedback. Do you have calendaring that week yet, or you?
I'm actually here that week, so I'm fine.
Okay. John was fine.
I think
All right, so the only person we need to get, so Pete, you're unavailable that week, and Larry, we gotta get his availability. Okay. How do
I
you
mean, I
want?
might be able to come back. Okay, for the week.
One to the 5th or the 6th.
Is there anything that works better for you, or?
The week after.
Yeah. Well, I guess looking at the week after, if you look at Monday the 10th or Tuesday the 11th, is there any?
Jason, so the next meeting, that week of July 4th, we're going to have, in advance of that, the documents and then cull down to 3 recommendations, right?
If we can, right? Like if-
Couldn't Pete do that work and then send the chair a memo as to his 3?
Yeah, I think that would
So
work.
we can-
Westboro Fire requesting the engine, 8027 Ambassador Drive for an oven fire. Westboro requesting the engine, 8027 Ambassador Drive for the oven fire.
My suggestion would be that once we have all the submissions in, that those submissions, hopefully, if we get everything electronically, all the submissions can be sent out to all the voting members, as well as the forms that need to be completed. And, you're not sending us your top 3, you're basically doing the grading for all of them, and you're submitting them all back. And then, Ken will compile everything, but between the chiefs and I and that, we'll compile, get everything compiled and distilled down so that, next time you meet, you can take a look through at all the scores and you can see where the top ones lie, where your top 3 are, and then have the discussion from there, as to who you're going to have in to interview and things like that. So, to John's point, that kind of streamlines the process a little bit and keeps you moving along fairly quickly.
Can we start getting those as those come in, just to take a look at them?
Well, they're in on the 28th.
If that's a deadline,
Yeah,
already in
that's the
before
deadline.
then,
If there are any that come in beforehand,
we'll get them as they come in.
We can
So
do that.
we're not getting all rush at once unless everybody waits till the last minute.
yeah.
Mark, you mentioned that just the voting members get those. Can we make an exception to make sure that Kathy gets them as well?
Yeah, I think
Sure.
we absolutely should.
That's
I
fine.
can look at them.
Give
Yeah,
some work.
You still, I think we need feedback.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Why
the
is
point of
it-
the process.
Well, that's-
Why is the advisory member on this one ex officio?
That was the way the selectmen set it up.
Because they didn't want a conflict if they had to vote on something.
They can't, as an ex officio, she can't vote on it for advisory
Period.
either. So she's losing a vote
So it
here
doesn't make a lot
and
of
there.
sense to be-
I was able to vote on this committee when I was the advisory person. So my personal opinion is I wish she could vote. Because she's losing a vote at advisory. She can't vote there because even though she's only an ex officio here. So she's unable to vote both ways.
They brought that up at the selectmen's meeting. I was watching on TV. I thought they said she could vote.
No, Janet made it very clear.
Yeah.
They got it out.
Because there was
Yeah.
some,
Clear.
No.
there was some
Yeah.
gray area about it.
Yeah, we pulled out the
I guess
bylaw.
I'll-
Finally.
Do any of you want to speak on the matter, or you just, that was your decision and?
That was the decision.
Okay, good.
I mean, look, I'm not I've been an ex officio on the study committee, and I've never had a vote, but I think most of you would agree that, whether you've got a vote or not, you influence, the discussion, you influence the way things go, and that's the way that, I try to, help the committee. And so Kathy may not have a vote, but I'm sure her input is going to influence, the committee, and the way that the committee will go.
And for the record, I don't really care if I vote or not, because I don't know there's going to be that much to truly vote on. The reason I want to do this is because I've done this over and over and over the last 25 years as far as building projects go. So I'm not doing this just because I'm on advisory. I actually have done this a whole lot. So that's where I really want to be involved, is when we really get into the number crunching and really try to control these projects. So I don't really care if I vote, because I don't know what I don't know how many votes there's going to be. Now, you may say, oh, you're not really thinking through this. I just can't think of what are you going to truly vote on other than get your OPM or whatever. So I don't really care. I just want to be able to participate in the process as far as trying to control this cost and get this building built correctly so we don't have some disasters we've had in the past year. So I don't care as long as I can do that.
So what I would recommend is that we schedule, I guess, sorry Chief, you had a question.
I just was wondering if John could, since he just went through it, can give us some further enlightenment. How many apps did you guys get? How did you vet through them, and how did you choose the person for the OPM that you chose for your project?
We had the same thing. We had a bunch of people pulling papers, but we had about 6 or 8, and I think we interviewed 5 with the building committee in Weston, open session, and then we went through kind of a checklist. We had a score sheet. Number of projects I've done, experience, number of jobs going on at the time that they can handle. I'll see if I can get a hold of the sheet. But,
I get the same sheets.
yeah,
So, yeah.
from MMA.
Yeah.
But, yeah, then you sit down and I mean, the people will come in and present their projects, present what they'll do for you, and then, you present the top 3, and then you narrow it down from there.
Then maybe what we did last time is start calling around, for their references and, okay.
That's the biggest thing, is to, call the references and then the people that worked with the references, and you'll get a good sense of what's going on.
So, what I would recommend is that on the 28th, I guess in advance of the 28th, we should work to find a way to electronically distribute this information. In my recommendation, if it's all possible, and I think it is, if you talk to Tom, is you should be able to just upload it to a section of the website. It's all public documentation anyways, but if there's anything...
Well, the documents are not public until an award is made.
So I guess you can put a restricted site up on,
yeah.
so whatever
Tom
the
will
right
figure it out.
rules.
Yeah.
That way, wherever Pete is, wherever I am, wherever John, any of us are, we have the ability to access it from anywhere.
Okay.
Then what I would recommend we do is we meet on Thursday, July 6th, with the condition that if you think that the best process is that someone goes through kind of the committee's written responses first, you need to make sure you have enough time to do that before the 6th. The other thing I can recommend is, I don't see any, especially if you only get 5 or 6 responses, right? We don't know how many responses we're going to get. If you get 20 versus 5, this might be a different discussion. But if you have 5, then I don't see any reason why we can't all come together and just talk about how we scored them. And something that I may say may trigger something John saw, and between the two, versus if you're just independently looking at my score sheet and looking at John's score sheet, might trigger something that I didn't think about that John thought about. So I personally don't have any objection to just airing that out in public, because that's the way that we're all going to be able to communicate, and that's the most transparent process. And it takes a lot of work off of your plate on a holiday week, but it also creates no questions of interpretation. I think the only one that at least someone's going to have to be on the same page with, probably me, is what Pete's reaction was, because he won't be here to necessarily verbalize that. And we may not make a decision that night because of, and we're not going to make a decision because the only decision we're making that night would be to who we're bringing in to interview. So you wouldn't be missing out necessarily on the selection. Then the question is, do we want to get an interview date on the calendar now, or would you rather wait to see calendars solidify a little bit? Because I don't think it's going to be very long after that 6th that we want to bring these folks in for an interview.
Probably the next week.
I say schedule it. We're already running out of time.
Do you want to do it as early as how much time do we have to leave? Because you got to notify, or you could notify them that if they're selected as the top 3 on the 6th, that they're going to be expected to show up Monday night at 6 or whatever.
If we get 5 or 6, we can send out a form letter to them thanking them for their submission. Committee is meeting on the 6th to determine finalists for interviews. Interviews will be scheduled on this date at these times. So we can do something like that if you want to pick a date now. And that way, after people submit, we can send that out to them.
I would advocate for that.
I would too.
Do you want to do beginning of the week of the 10th?
Yes.
Okay. 10th or 11th? Any preference between that, Monday and Tuesday?
Probably the 11th, Tuesday.
I'd rather go Tuesday if possible.
Selectmen don't have a meeting that night, just in case they want time.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. 11th, good? All right, so subject to, Larry's going to just have to probably hold on to these dates because I think we have a quorum regardless at this point. So it's going to be the 6th. Is there a meeting time preference of this committee? Mark posted for 6:30. We used to meet at 6. We used to meet at 7. We used to meet later. I don't know if anyone has any strong preference based on.
So you need more time, right, to get...
6:30.
Whatever you do, I'll accommodate.
7:30. I've been advised we meet at 7:30 till like 2 in the morning, so Stephanie and I are pretty used to whatever.
So I'm gonna recommend we do 6 o'clock both nights, just given that it's probably gonna be a decent amount of discussion. So 6 o'clock on July 6th and 6 o'clock on July 11th. I will post both meetings now, just so it's out there. We can add items to the agenda for the 11th if needed based on the 6th. We'll still have time to do that.
Sorry for asking too many questions, but if we just get 5 applications, are we not going to do a due diligence in terms of finding out their references before we rank them? Or are we just going to rank them and then do the references thereafter? Because I would think part of the reference process, or part of the ranking process, you'd want to at least know from their references the quality of their work.
I mean, I think that would be something you're doing between the 28th and the 6th. The question is, who's doing that?
Right.
Is that typically something that should be done by a committee member or a town official?
I think it should be a committee member, but the committee members are voting. It depends how many you get in. You
We
know.
divvied them up last
Okay, I'll
time.
split them
Yeah.
up.
Well,
We can divvy them up, each one do one.
All right, so I guess every committee member will take one, and to the extent we don't get 8, then someone gets off easy, I guess, and doesn't have to do as much vetting for this round, and I'm sure there'll be something in the next round. Is that fair?
It's like 4 working days, right?
Yeah.
Between the 28th.
Well, I mean, hopefully most aren't coming in at that deadline, but any of us that have submitted proposals
I think
before,
they will. I
that
think
that tends to happen, but, you know, I guess we'll just wait and see. And to the extent that something comes in next week, you know, there's no reason we don't start calling
Sure.
ahead of time.
Sure.
So, what I think I will do is, as you get, responses, I think the recommendation that I would have is you and Tom post them
Okay.
immediately,
Yep.
right? Because that way, and then I will kind of just go down the line, maybe I'll go alphabetical, or unless someone has any other suggestions, and just say, you call this, you know, first response in, here's your thing, be ready to report back by the 6th.
Yeah.
I'll probably put you at the end, just in fairness that you won't necessarily be here.
Are both meetings going to be here, and if so, is the room available for both times?
If we want to have them taped, my recommendation is we go to the townhouse, just because it's probably more logistically easier for Southborough access, but we'd have to check the townhouse schedule.
So normally, nothing is booked on Tuesday nights in deference to the selectmen's meeting, so, and I think it probably would be good, the room sets up better to do interviews, and if they have presentations with the PowerPoint and everything else and that, it probably sets up better for the interviews, so we could schedule the interviews. Probably the meeting on the 6th you could do here, the meeting but the interviews, we could schedule those for the townhouse.
Okay, everyone comfortable with that? So fire station, the 6th.
I will say, I just want to, when Mike was talking, only 4 days to check the references. That week's kind of a quiet week for me, so if anybody doesn't have time to call them, I'd be happy to call on the references for those people.
Yeah, and if we can't get a hold of them, then I think that's just a consideration that we need to take into account when we're discussing it. But I think you'll find someone in a week and figure something out.
Mark, did you ask for them electronically? The
I
submission?
believe that I did, yes. Yeah.
Not in that OPM PDF that I found online.
I thought it was there, but if it's not, it's, like I said, it shouldn't be difficult to make them electronic. So.
Is that on public record if we share them online?
It's going to be a closed site, so that you'll have access, the members of the committee will have access to it, but the public won't have access to it.
Okay.
Until you want.
And Mark, will you let us know when you deposit material into that site?
Absolutely. Yeah, I will let you know. I'll see if there's a way that Tom can set something up so that you get a notice that
Yeah.
there's been an addition to the, to it. If not, we'll do
That's
the
how
old-fashioned-
Shutterfly works.
do it the old-fashioned way, yeah.
I think just from a technology perspective, I think the optics of this project are obviously going to be watched pretty closely by a lot of folks in town. My recommendation, if possible, while you're talking to Tom, is that there's some sort of town email box that any correspondence from this committee is going through, just so that if anyone submits any sort of public records request about anything related to this project that didn't go through your email or one of the chiefs, etc., that you can just go in and grab it. I don't think we want to be sifting through personal email boxes. I think personal email boxes should just be used for scheduling meeting notices. So whether that's getting 8 different email accounts or whether it's getting one and figuring out something on that, just thinking through how you would respond to any such requests. But I think obviously for this committee, we can't be vetting anything via email other than meeting dates essentially anyways. But I do think there probably will likely be correspondence as we go forward between the OPM and at least probably the chair and vice chair on a regular basis, just saying, here's my weekly update, this is what we're going to discuss at Tuesday's meeting, etc. And there's just naturally some of that dialogue.
So we may be able to temporarily assign the OPM, a Southborough email.
Yeah, so
Okay, so that way you've got it all, and it's all searchable, and it's easy to find.
Other committee members too, you think we should have temporary ones too?
I'll see how many we have available.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the Tom question.
I just think the more you can do to streamline that
Yeah.
process.
John, logistically, in terms of the interviews, so we're going to we'll have 3 interviews then on the evening of the 11th. We'll start at 6 o'clock. How long, should we?
We usually give about 30 or 40 minutes
Okay.
for the presentation and follow-up questions.
So do you schedule this then on the hour?
Yeah.
So 6, 7, and 8 should give enough time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And we held them to it, basically, if they were not, we said the next people are waiting,
Yep,
so.
yep, okay. All right.
It's like that. It's like Tom,
Yeah, that clock, right?
Yeah.
give us your best 40 minutes.
Is there anything else the committee wants to discuss tonight, or any next steps you want to take between now and the 6th of July?
We're good. I think we need to really take on a lot more than that right now. What do you guys think?
How about the RFQ for the architects? Is that,
Mark's going to
Yeah, that's
confirm the
Yeah, I'll
logistics.
confirm the logistics of that, and that's something that'll have to be put together
so we
So-
can pull that trigger as soon as,
as soon as we
As
can.
soon as we
So let
possibly
me,
can.
yeah, so let me get the answer, and then I can report back to
We want to include the project manager's input in that as well, right?
Well, you want their input in the selection process and in the process, but if we can get the advertising piece done,
He might be able to help.
A little bit earlier, we can-
What to put out for that.
Right, you can
That's
meet-
what he,
well, right. But then if you want his or her input into what we're putting out for, then we have to wait until we get somebody on board.
right. I think we're hiring a professional to do this. I think we should have him have the input and hiring the other professional as well. Just my thought.
Well, they're going to have input. It's just a matter of whether they read what you send out for.
Yeah, we want to make sure we send out all the proper scope
Proper scope
of
of
duties and everything. And how we're going to know that? I mean, he's a professional, he does that all the time, he or she.
Well, we're not really inventing a wheel here, are we? I mean, this has been done by other towns, so we
There's
should.
only so many.
Well, we
contractors
have
that
thrown a
bidding
couple
on.
spins in it, because now we have, we might have a little bit bigger scope than just one building. There may be golf course considerations and school considerations, we may want to get some of that language in there, so we're not.
It's not going to be in there in July, right? I mean, it's,
That might have to be a separate project.
That must be.
Under the guidelines.
He may
Well,
have some
I
input.
think the site work may be something that can be included in, but again, you're not building a clubhouse, you're not rebuilding a tee box, things like that. You're not building the road into Woodward. You may be cutting in the access and you're roughing something in, but you're not actually doing it.
mean, my thought would be that you, to the extent that we can get this out sooner rather than later, that you work with Mike as the architect on, once you get sworn in, of course.
Right.
But you know, you work with Mike to come up with the proper language, and Kathy has a ton of experience too. There's no reason that you can't be vetting those things.
I can reach back out, you know, I'll get the clarification from the AG's office, and I'll reach back out to Westborough, which is where we had the documents. They've just, you know, gone through the process and get the documents they issued for the RFQ, you know, for the architect.
Yeah, I mean, and you can go beyond
And
Westborough too. I mean,
modify those, right.
there's plenty of towns that we compared up against when
Right.
we did our analysis for space needs that are done with construction at this point, that hired someone.
Right.
So we should be able to just find those, streamline them, and I mean, right, this committee had no say essentially in the OPM process.
Correct.
So, all right, so you'll report back on that.
Mhm.
We have our next meeting date, and of course, if anything else comes up in the meantime, we can figure out a way to deal with it. I do think it would probably be helpful to put a placeholder on the selectmen's agenda for the, I mean, pretty much I would say, especially where they're meeting monthly as opposed to every other week.
Yeah, just for July and August.
It makes sense to have a placeholder if we choose not to use it as a committee, but I think the more we're out in front talking about this, the more public participation we're going to have, and avoid issues down the road with planning, conservation, etc. Are there any other items from the committee, from the audience? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?